They say the Pine Barrens never forget a scream. The trees keep it, like sap that never dries. But last week, something screamed back, and the woods answered. Out here, the Jersey Devil doesn't hunt alone anymore. At Whispering Narratives, we don't just tell stories, we keep the doors honest. If you make it through this one, subscribe before the next full moon. The Barrens remember who listens. The radio hissed first, then came the scream. It wasn't human, not entirely. A sound stretched between terror and rage, echoing through the pine-soaked dark of the New Jersey wilderness. Ranger Davis leaned out of his truck window, trying to triangulate the source. The static coughed again. Then a second sound. Wings. Massive, beating, dragging air, thick as syrup. Something shrieked above the treetops, and the pines bowed as though the forest itself flinched. By morning, there was no Ranger Davis, only his hat, impaled on a branch, dripping black pitch instead of blood. Locals in Leeds Point whispered the old rhyme again, the one parents used to scare kids from wandering too deep. If you see hooves in the sand, run, for they'll soon turn to claws in the mud. That's where Elias Rourke comes in. Ex-tracker, ex-soldier, still breathing only because nightmares get tired before he does. He'd been chasing lycanthropic signatures up and down the eastern seaboard, half believing, half hoping, until he got the call. Another one missing. Pine Barrens, you were born there, weren't you? He was, but the Barrens were more than home. They were inheritance. And he'd sworn never to set foot there again after what happened to his father on that final hunt. Still, when blood calls, duty answers. The camera of your mind follows his truck headlights carving tunnels through fog. Every beam catches ash-colored trees leaning inward, their branches tangled like ribs. The GPS dies 10 miles in. The engine falters, then steadies, like it too fears this place. He parks near an abandoned ranger station half swallowed by vines. On the porch hangs a wind chime made of bone. Inside his duffel, silver rounds etched, with runes, a vial of wolfsbane oil, a voice recorder, and one creased photograph. His family, smiling beneath the same pines now black as soot. He presses record. Elias Rourke. October 12th, full moon in 72 hours. Locals reporting. Mutilations, avian and lupine patterns mixed. Either my quarry's evolving, or I'm walking into something older. A wolf howls in the distance, then another sound overlaps. Shriller, winged, almost avian. The forest replies with silence, the kind that hums in your bones. He mutters. Two voices, one breath apart. Lightning fractures the horizon. For a second the sky is full of shapes. Wings, fur, antlers, impossible limbs. Then darkness again. He whispers to himself, as though afraid the trees might hear. Dad, if you're still out here, keep me off their path. From the shadows, something moves. Slow, deliberate, watching. Two eyes gleam amber, then blink, sideways like a goat's. Footprints appear in the mud behind his truck. Hoofprints that morph into claw marks halfway through the stride. Elias raises his rifle, and the scene cuts to black, with the sound of one low, ragged growl that doesn't end. The Pine Barrens never forget a scent. Every fallen pine needle, every patch of bog moss holds memory like a wound. By dawn, Elias Rourke was already knee-deep in that memory, tracing claw marks that were too deliberate to be random. They formed a spiral, 13 gouges looping inward around a cedar stump. At the center, an animal skull, deer mostly, except for the teeth, too sharp, too human. He took a photo, muttering into his recorder. Pattern looks ritualistic, claw depth inconsistent, two species, one message, territory. Then he found the sigil burned into the bark of a dead pine, a circle intersected by wings and claws. He knew it well. It was carved into his father's rifle butt, the family mark. He remembered being a boy, watching his father polish silver bullets in the candlelight. This is what keeps the curse away. Man would whisper. But you don't ever shoot unless the moon demands it. The Rourkes weren't just hunters. They were keepers, bound to watch over something buried beneath the Barrens long before New Jersey had a name. That night, Elias set camp by the ruins of the old Leeds homestead. Nothing left but the stone foundation and a well sealed with iron chains. Locals said it was where Mother Leeds birthed her 13th child, the one who flew screaming into the pines. He'd laughed at that as a kid. He wasn't laughing now. When the wind changed, he smelled it. Iron, decay, and pine, resin thick as blood. He turned, rifle up, scanning. A figure stood between the trees, tall, gaunt, wrong. Its eyes burned orange, its mouth stretched too wide, its limbs bent backward, but its chest rose and fell like a man's. Then, in a flicker of moonlight, it was gone. He exhaled, lowering the gun, but the whisper followed him, a voice like rusted wings scraping bark. Elias Rourke. Blood of the Pact. He froze. Nobody had said that name in those woods in 100 years. That night, he dreamt he saw his ancestor kneeling beside Mother Leeds, holding a stillborn child. When the lightning struck, the corpse opened its eyes. Another figure, half man, half wolf, stood at the door watching. The two men cut their palms, pressed them together over the infant's cradle, and spoke one vow. We split the curse. One sky, one soil, none shall leave the Barrens unmarked. Elias woke to his own blood dripping onto the dirt, his palm gashed, the wound fresh though he'd never touched a blade. The spiral of claw marks around his tent now glowed faintly red. He stumbled out, half believing it was still a dream, until he saw the tracks again, hoof prints, claw prints, side by side, leading toward the well. He whispered to his recorder, "The Pact. It's real, and I'm not the first Rourke it's called home." The ground around the well pulsed, faintly breathing. He leaned closer, flashlight trembling. Below, something moved, a wing, a claw, maybe both. Then a low voice rose from the depths, speaking in two tones at once, one human, one beast. "You were meant to continue what your father ended. Open the seal." He stumbled back, heart hammering, flashlight flickering over the chains. They were rusted through, not from age, but from heat, as though something had burned its way out. He raised the rifle, aimed into the darkness, and saw eyes staring back. Not one pair, two. The next instant, the ground split open, the air filled with shrieks, part howl, part scream, and a black wind howled out of the well. His silver bullets rattled in their box. The moon broke free from the clouds, and deep, inside his chest, something answered it. His pupils narrowed, his breath turned hot and ragged. He whispered, "Not now, not here," but the blood didn't care. The curse had found its host again. The Barrens whispered their approval, and somewhere, something with wings unfurled them in the dark. Night pressed its ribs against the Barrens and breathed in. The pines rattled like bones in a mason jar, and the old chains on the well whispered a sound that wasn't wind. Elias cinched his forearm strap until leather bit skin, a pain that kept him on the right side of human. For now, he worked by a red-filtered headlamp to keep his pupils from shrinking to moon glass. He laid a triangle of snares baited with rotten offal and a spritz of deer musk, then a second triangle with wolfsbane oil brushed on the wire. Last, the silver cage collapsed like a cruel accordion. A tug on the center pin, and the world would become tight, bright, and inescapable. He clicked his recorder. Perimeter set. North line faces Batstow Creek, south line toward Wharton State. If it flies, it'll quarter the wind and drop where scent stacks. If it runs, the woods answered with a single percussive thump, like a heavy body landing on a hollow trunk. Elias lifted his rifle. Another thump, farther right. Then a third above him. Wings, he thought, big, hunting high, then hopping branch to branch to keep silent. The red light stuttered, as if the air were chewing it. Elias killed the lamp and let his eyes drink the night. The moon was a rind behind scudding clouds. The stars looked like pinholes in wet velvet. Something clicked behind him, a delicate, deliberate sound. Not claw on rock, hoof on bark. He turned slow, crosshairs floating. A white shape stood between two boles, too long in the leg, too narrow in the waist, head cocked with a predator's curiosity. It had horns that weren't antlers, wings folded like a bat's funeral shroud, and a tapering muzzle that grinned without lips. The Jersey Devil, the story that grew teeth because people needed the dark to explain itself, stared at him as if amused by living men. Elias set his breath, in for 5, out for 6. Squeeze, don't jerk. He lowered the reticle to the creature's chest, imagined the silver round as a promise made metal. A second shape hulked into the corner of his vision, low, heavy-shouldered, lupine. It moved without sound, even the needles refusing to betray. It. When it lifted its head, amber eyes gathered him like tinder. 2 signatures, 2 beasts, or 1 curse-wearing twins. The devil hissed. A kettle turned to scream. The wolf answered with a rolling subterranean growl that Elias felt in his teeth. Back off, he whispered, as if rational language meant anything out. Here, the devil unfolded its wings and stepped aside, not yielding, but inviting. The wolf padded forward, nose tasting the world. Elias watched it sniff the wolf's bane, recoil, circle the other triangle, and stop dead at the silver cage. It knew, or something inside it did. The moon slid free of a cloud and seared him. Heat climbed his spine like a ladder tipped to heaven. His gums prickled, nails flexed. The leather strap on his forearm creaked, then popped a stitch. Not now, not now, not. His father's voice. If the moon wants you, she'll take you polite if. You bow rough if you don't. Elias bit the inside of his cheek until blood drowned the wolf coughing at the door of his ribs. Stay, he said to himself, to the woods, to the dead. Stay. The devil's head cocked as if listening to a far hallway. Then it looked down. Its hoof, cloven and wrong, pressed into the sand and drew a curve. Another. 13 gouges. The spiral. At the center it wrote a mark that matched the burn scar on Elias's shoulder. A sigil he'd never shown anyone. Who taught you my skin? He said, and hated how small he sounded. The wolf's lip lifted, a string of drool hung like a spidering thread in moonlight. It stepped onto the spiral, placed its paw on the same center, and pressed the ground side. The well rattled. From below came a voice layered like shale. Old man, child, goat, woman, soldier. It spoke a phrase older than the state. The pact is hungry. Pressure built around Elias's temples. The trees leaned closer, bark slickening as if sap were sweat. Mosquitoes went frantic, then vanished, swallowed by a sudden cold. Enough, Elias said to whatever tribunal presided over this court. He shot. The silver round snapped the air and hit the devil's shoulder. Light burst, not blood, a flash like struck quartz. The thing didn't scream, it laughed. A breathy bray that made every bird for a mile go silent forever. The wolf launched, not at Elias, at the devil. They collided with a sound like a coffin dropped from a second-story window. Wings and fur and teeth made a fist and rolled. Pines bowed, earth gave, the spiral smeared. Elias worked the bolt, fired again, missed as the pair whipped like a snared storm. He grabbed the silver cage pin and yanked. The lattice snapped open, a gleaming rib cage slamming shut over both forms. But the devil's wings flared and caught 2 bars, torso wedging while the wolf slammed against it, jaws worrying at the devil's neck with a lover's ugliness. Hold, Elias muttered, hand on the lever. Hold, the devil inhaled. The air itself obeyed. Wind drove into the cage, pressurizing, forcing bars apart. Joints squealed. The lever cut Elias's palm as it kicked. The wolf backed off, hackles electric, eyes not at the devil now but at Elias. Something like a word crawled out of its throat. Rourke, the strap on Elias's arm, snapped. Pain went white, then crimson, then good. Bones lit with wet lightning. His jaw remembered another hinge. His heart learned to stutter to a hunter's drum. Don't, he told himself. But language was already an artifact. The devil tore free of one bar, then another, and folded wrong, to slip through a space that wasn't there. It staggered back, one wing clipped, black light leaking where a wound should have wept red. Its eyes, goat-slit, bright as foundry iron, found Elias, and widened recognition and something like, "Welcome." He fell to his knees and to all fours in the same breath, palms split, nails spooled into knives. His back lifted a cathedral of pain and locked into a new country, his mouth unzipped, teeth surging like a field of wheat in a storm. The forest did not recoil. It approved. He smelled everything, iron memory in the soil, the worm sugar scent of rot, the devil's stone dust aura, the wolf's hot breath laced with pine ghost, his own fear congealing into purpose the way sap hardens, into amber. He rose, taller, heavier, the world suddenly tuned to useful. The rifle on the ground looked like a child's stick. The devil shrieked and kicked off, half lifting, half lurching, leaving a spray of black sparks. The wolf paced around Elias in a half circle, not subservient, not challenging, measuring, deciding. Elias, the new Elias, every hair a sensor, every tendon an argument, cut a glance at the well. A light flickered in its throat, like a beacon draining a lighthouse. The voice from below returned, now eager. Blood and wing and fang. The pact returns. Finish what your fathers began. The devil beat the air hard enough to strip needles. The wolf's ears pivoted. Elias felt the moon throw a rope around his spine and tighten. Without speaking, without needing to, the wolf and the werewolf who wore Elias's skeleton chose a direction. They would run the devil down before it healed. They would intersect it in the gnat-thick clearings, at the old sand roads where teenagers come to dare and leave without their laughter. They would end this before the well could empty the rest of its hunger into the world. Elias launched. The wolf launched. The pines blurred into pillars. The ground became a drum he played with claws. Behind them, the well breathed once, like a thing waking and smiling. If you make it out, mark survival. They're watching. The hunt tore through the barrens like a fever. Every breath Elias took steamed from his throat in silver ribbons. Beside him, the other wolf, older, darker, scarred like living bark, kept pace, its flank brushing his every few strides as though to remind him, we hunt together, or we die apart. The scent of the Jersey devil rode the wind like sulfur and spoiled milk. It bled from treetops and tangles of smoke. Each leap carried them closer to that reek of ash and fear. Then came the first intrusion, the stuttering rumble of a pickup engine. Headlights speared through the forest gloom. A trio of teenagers in a rust-eaten Ford, drunk on beer and ghost stories, were off-roading down Batster Creek Road, laughing as they filmed on their phones. The woods around them rippled with moonlight like a breathing lung. The older wolf froze at the sound, hackles stiff. Elias sniffed and caught the faint, static-laced scent of metal and oil. The devil's trail crossed the road ahead of the truck. No, his mind whispered, though his throat only managed to growl. The devil struck before thought could finish. A shape erupted from the canopy, wings snapping open with the sound of cracking sails. It landed in front of the Ford, hooves gouging asphalt, and screamed, an iron-bending, glass-breaking shriek that blew the windshield inward. The truck jackknifed, rolled once, came to rest upside down against a pine. The boys' laughter turned to sobs. Elias lunged, his claws tore through ferns, mud splashing his muzzle. The devil reared, half shadow, half blinding flame, and spat a gout of white fire that wasn't fire at all, cold light, the kind that burns without smoke. The wrecked truck ignited anyway. Inside, one boy clawed at the seatbelt. The other slumped unmoving. Elias barreled through the flames. Silver fur seared to black, but pain was just another drumbeat. He ripped the door from its hinges, dragged the survivor free, and shoved him toward the tree line. "Run," he tried to say, but it came out as a snarl thick with smoke. The devil's whip-like tail cracked across his back, sending sparks of agony down his spine. The other wolf leapt, slammed into the devil's flank, and both tumbled into the creek bed. Steam exploded where its blood touched water. Elias followed, sliding down the embankment, claws finding stone. The moon hung straight overhead now, round and merciless. The devil hissed and flared its broken wing, half gliding up the far slope. The older wolf bit down on its leg and was kicked loose with a noise that sounded like ribs breaking. Elias roared, a sound no throat should manage, and sprang, catching the devil mid-lift. They crashed through saplings into the clearing beyond the old Batstow mill ruins. The stones there were ancient colonial remnants of the ironworks, but in the moonlight, Elias saw sigils carved beneath the moss. Same pattern as the well, same spiral. Only deeper. As they fought, fang to hoof, claw to wing, the marks began to glow. The ground pulsed red, veins of molten light crawling outward. A vision flared inside Elias's mind, his father standing right where he was years ago, rifle aimed, moonlight carving his jaw. The older wolf behind him, Elias's current companion, watching. His father shot the devil once, and the curse took him instead. The scene dissolved, replaced by the present, the same soil, the same sigils now feeding on blood. The pact was never broken, just waiting for renewal. The devil's screech turned desperate. It reared back, wings wide, eyes blazing. "End it, blood of Rourke," it rasped in two voices. "Or join it." Elias drove his claws into its chest, tearing through hide and bone. A gout of light burst forth, painting the ruins in searing white. The devil screamed, flung him back, and staggered into the creek. Steam boiled. The river turned black. He crawled to his knees, panting, fur slick, with burned blood. Across the water the devil crouched, half melted, half regenerating, its mouth spreading into something close to a grin. Behind it the older wolf limped from the shadows, its side torn open. The two monsters locked eyes, old kin, ancient grudge. Elias felt the pull in his veins, the same pull that dragged his ancestors into the pact. Two halves of the same curse were about to decide who kept breathing. "Finish it." The whisper came again, his father's voice this time. The devil lunged first, and the night itself bent around them. The creek steamed like a cauterized wound. Moonlight turned the vapor into shifting veils, and behind each veil, Elias swore he saw his father's silhouette. Rifle lowered, eyes solemn. The other wolf limped from the water and collapsed near the ruined mill. Its breathing was ragged, the rhythm of a dying drum. Elias crouched beside it, muzzle still slick with the devil's black ichor. When he touched the creature's fur, flashes hit him. His father at this same creek, kneeling over the same beast, whispering a prayer that ended in a snarl. The truth burned its way through generations and into his marrow. This wolf wasn't an enemy. It was kin, his father's final shape, the part of the man the curse refused to bury. The devil crawled to the opposite bank, half blind, wing dragging. Its voice cracked between human and beast. It was never war, it was division, two halves of the same hunger. The words twisted in Elias's skull, unlocking something older than language. He staggered backward, clutching his head as visions erupted. Colonial torches, the Leeds homestead aflame, men with rifles surrounding a pit that screamed. At the center stood two brothers, one sprouting wings, the other fangs. They cut their palms, let blood fall onto the soil, and swore that their offspring would guard the boundary between sky and earth. But men forgot, and the boundary rotted. Back in the present, the ground beneath the ruins began to pulse. The sigils in the stone blazed brighter, feeding on every drop of spilled blood. Elias realized the pact was not about peace. It was containment. Each generation had to renew it with sacrifice. One life to seal the gate below the Barrens. His father had chosen himself. Now the pact demanded another Rourke. The devil lurched forward, wings flaring, shadows whipping like banners. It hissed, "You carry both, wing and claw. Finish the circle or the Barrens open and everything with a pulse will wear teeth." Elias looked at the older wolf, his father's ghost in flesh, and then at his own hands, half human again as the moon slid behind a veil of cloud. He could feel the two hungers wrestling inside him. One to kill, one to guard. The wolf nudged him, eyes gone pale as milk. It bared its throat, an invitation, a command. Lightning struck a pine, splitting it to the roots. The blast threw sparks over the creek, and the wind carried voices, echoes of every Rourke and leads before him, chanting the old vow, one sky, one soil, blood for silence. Elias knelt, trembling. The devil spread its ruined wings, drawing, the sigil in the air with fire. Beneath his feet, the stones hummed like a heartbeat. He pressed his claw to his father's throat but paused. "This ends with me," he growled, voice dragging over broken syllables. "I'll feed the pact, but I'll change it." He drove his hand into his own chest. Silver-tainted blood spattered the stones. The earth drank greedily. The runes flared white, then turned black, sealing with smoke instead of light. The devil screamed, caught between triumph and terror. Its body folded in on itself, wings crumbling to ash. The creek swallowed the remains, leaving only ripples that glowed once, then died. Elias fell beside the older wolf, breathing shallow. The curse unspooled inside him, fur receding, claws dulling, pain replacing power. The moon's pull loosened, indifferent again. Dawn found the Pine Barrens still. Ash settled on water like dust on an old photograph. The air smelled of wet iron and absolution. Elias woke human, shirtless, scarred, the mark on his chest sealed into a spiral of puckered flesh. The other wolf was gone. Only a trail of paw prints led toward the rising sun, fading after a few steps, as if walking out of time. He whispered into the silence, "Rest, Dad, I've paid it forward." A gust stirred the trees, almost a sigh. From somewhere deep below, the well exhaled a final contented breath. He picked up his rifle, its silver rounds melted into useless lumps. No more hunts, just watchfulness. Because he knew the Barrens would sleep, but never forever. At the tree line he looked back. Between the trunks, a shadow moved, tall, winged and four-legged all at once. The new guardian, the synthesis of what once warred. Elias smiled, tired and bloodless. "The Barrens, remember," he murmured. "Now they have something new to remember with." Morning arrived like an apology that didn't mean it. The Pine Barrens looked soft under the rising light, but it was the kind of softness that comes after violence, like bandages over a corpse. Mist crawled low across the ground, and the air tasted of rain and iron. Elias sat on the tailgate of a ranger's truck that wasn't his. The rescue crews had already come and gone, dragging out the half-burned Ford from Batstow Road, counting survivors in disbelief. Only one had lived, the youngest boy, mute now, sitting in the back seat wrapped in a silver blanket, eyes fixed on the tree line like he expected it to blink. The deputies talked low near the mill ruins, gesturing to the scorched spiral on the bay ground. "Some kind of lightning," one said. Another muttered, "Or arson. These woods have a way of burning when no one's looking." They didn't see the black ash shifting, faintly alive. They didn't notice how the morning birds refused to land near the well. Elias kept silent. His clothes were torn, his body striped with half-healed wounds that no medic could explain. The mark over his heart, the spiral scar, throbbed beneath the fabric. It pulsed once with every beat of his heart. A second rhythm nested inside the first. He felt watched, not by men, by the Barrens themselves. When one of the deputies waved him over for questioning, Elias caught a glimpse of something. In the tree line, a silhouette too tall, too crooked, standing where the mist thickened. It watched him for a long moment before folding in half and disappearing into the fog. He told himself it was just his brain misfiring from exhaustion, but deep down, he knew the Pact hadn't vanished. It had adapted. By noon, the crews packed up. The survivor's mother arrived, screaming gratitude and horror in the same breath. The boy wouldn't speak, only drew circles on his knee with a stick of charcoal. 13 loops spiraling inward. Elias stared until he couldn't breathe. When no one watched, he walked back toward the creek. The path felt unfamiliar, as if the forest rearranged itself after every human step. Crows followed him, whispering nonsense. At the mill, the water ran black for a moment, then cleared. The runes were gone from the stones, their glow replaced by etchings that looked new, sharp and wet. His handwriting, but not made by his hands. Words in no tongue men had spoken for 2 centuries. He crouched and touched one. The stone was warm. The guardian becomes the gate. His pulse stuttered. He whispered to the air. What does that mean? The wind answered with the low hum of wings, not the Jersey Devil's harsh scream, but something slower, heavier, older. He turned toward the sound and saw the tree line ripple. Branches bowed inward as if something vast moved beneath them. It wasn't flying overhead. It was flying through the woods, wings dragging through soil like a plow. A shape coalesced for an instant. Feathers made of fur, antlers splitting into horns, eyes glowing amber through the daylight haze. The hybrid guardian, the thing his blood had summoned. Elias fell to one knee. The mark on his chest burned. The creature didn't attack, didn't flee. It lowered its head in acknowledgement, like a beast greeting its reflection. Then it was gone, dissolving into the trees with a sigh that made the world colder. He stood there a long time, trembling, knowing he'd done what no Rourke or Leeds had dared. He'd rewritten the curse. But change has a cost. That night, the news called it the Batstow Fire. 3 dead, 1 missing ranger, Davis, and a series of unexplained animal attacks. The cameras showed scorched trees and burned feathers stuck in bark. Online forums lit up, Jersey Devil sightings, werewolf rumors, government cover-ups. One shaky phone video showed the creature crossing the creek at dawn, half silhouette, half mirage. The internet named it the Pine King. Elias watched from a lay motel room off Route 206. His reflection in the mirror flickered between human and something else every time the screen glowed. He turned off the light, muttered to himself, "The Barrens sleep, but they dream." Then, somewhere in the distance, a single howl echoed, long, low, and joined halfway through by a second sound, a beating of enormous wings. He smiled, weary and wild-eyed. "You're welcome, old man." The motel light buzzed once, then died. Outside, the fog rolled back in. The Pine Barrens exhaled, and the moon began to rise again. 2 weeks after the fire, the Pine Barrens looked like they always had. Endless, ordinary, impenetrable. The kind of place that swallows sins and spits out stories. A new ranger, Anna Del Vecchio, was assigned to replace Davis. She'd read his file twice, exemplary service record, vanished on patrol, presumed dead. But the deeper she hiked, the more she realized that presumed might not mean what she thought. The morning was clean, dew still clinging to ferns. She followed the faint smell of smoke until she reached the ruins of the old Batstow mill. Something shimmered near the creek, a half-buried recorder, its casing melted, its red light somehow still blinking. She pressed play. "If you find this, stay out of the pines at night. The curse isn't gone. It's awake. The devil wasn't our enemy. The devil was the lock. We broke it. Now something else guards the gate, and it remembers me. Tell the world the Jersey Devil isn't what they think. Tell them the Rourkes were right, and if you hear wings after sundown, run toward the light, not the howl. The tape hissed, then played something else, distant breathing, claws on gravel, and a second voice overlapping Elias's own. Blood for silence, one sky, one soil. Then a sound that wasn't human or beast, the kind of sound that makes birds drop from trees mid-flight. Anna's radio crackled. "You picking that up, Del Vecchio?" She froze. "Picking what up?" "Motion sensors at Batstow Creek just spiked. Something's moving west. Big." She looked up. The treetops were trembling. That night, locals swore they saw lights between the trees, not flashlights, not headlights. Columns of faint white glow drifting above the canopy. Hunters said deer tracks turned to claw marks halfway through the stride. Campers reported a winged wolf chasing off coyotes. And somewhere between Leeds Point and the old mill, a new sigil had appeared, carved deep into a cedar trunk, a spiral crossed by feathers and claws. They called it the Mark of the Pact Reborn, Elias's. Motel room was found empty, no signs of struggle, no luggage. Just an imprint on the mattress, like someone heavier than a man had lain there. And a single pine needle, standing upright on the nightstand, trembling though the window was closed. The local news lost interest after 3 days. But online, a myth was taking root. Hashtags, grainy photos, message board threads titled, "Something New in the Barrens." Some claimed to hear breathing through their phones when they played Elias's audio. Some said, if you slowed the recording. A second phrase whispered through the static, "Mark survival." They're watching. At Whispering Narratives, we don't just tell stories. We keep the doors honest. If you made it through this one, subscribe before the next full moon. And share this with the one friend who'd follow you into the woods, even knowing what waits beneath the pines, because some debts aren't paid in silver, they're paid in remembrance. The Barrens remember you.